So let's do the Monsters of Ravenloft then. So it looks like they've got some ideas here of how to make your own monsters. Describing monsters. Okay, so this is quite cool. This is something that has been missed out really so far. So this actually helps you in making the monsters feel a bit more horror-like. Hello, Carl. Thank you for joining us. So there's a little bit for newer DMs. This could actually be very helpful where there's some tips here of how to describe monsters. So even some stuff about tactics here, which is quite cool. Some traits, minion ideas. So cool. Oh, and then there's creating unique nightmares. Beware the Bagman. So that is not very fun. That is a sleeping adventurer, and what the hell is that? It looks a little bit like Carl. Okay, so let's have a look at what they've got here then, shall we? Let's have a little look at the table. So it looks like they've got a pretty good spread up to level 10. And then they've not got much higher level, which always seems to be the way. They don't seem to add many high level creatures into any of their books, but yeah, it makes sense. Most campaigns won't actually go until the later levels, so it makes sense to chuck a load early on. There's quite a lot of 8 level here as well, so let's have a look. Bodytaker plant. So there's a little bit of art here. And it is a huge plant, so you can see there is a person inside of this. And then it is a challenge 7 creature. It's got some multi-attacks, and it looks like it's sort of got like a swallow style mechanic here, but with some acid damage, the stunned, exhausted, restrained. So probably not very nice to deal with. So you get 3 Vine Lash attacks, all of which are going to do on average 11. And it's also got this entrapping pod, so it can actually swallow someone and keep them inside, burning away in acid. Not very nice. It's there's not too many plant creatures in Dungeons and Dragons as well, so probably quite nice to be adding some. And it looks like they've got some podlings as well. So these are little ones that you can add as little minions alongside your big guy here. Carl's saying, so when are we playing this then? Whenever you like, Carl. I'm ready. So we're looking through the monsters in the new book at the moment, having a look at what horrors Dungeons and Dragons have created for us. But yes, in case people didn't know, there is an adventure in this book as well, and it takes players from level 1 to level 3. So it's not as long as Curse of Strahd by any stretch. So if you want a full adventure that takes them through, I think Curse of Strahd takes you to level 10, then go ahead and use Curse of Strahd. But there is a little adventure here that takes them from level 1 to 3, between 3 to 5 sessions. Oh, Jesus, that is disgusting. What is that? That is not right. So that's called the Boneless. It's a challenge rating 1, and, well, it doesn't have bones. So I guess that makes sense why it's called Boneless, but that is disgusting. It does 2 slam attacks. If it attacks a creature large or smaller, the creature is grappled. Oh, you don't want to be grappled by that thing, do you? Look at it. Disgusting. And it's got Crushing Embrace, where if it grappled by it, the bonus is attached. The target is blinded and unable to breathe. The target must succeed on a strength save or take damage. That is horrifying. I might actually have nightmares after seeing that. The dull NPC will be in your session. In your next session. Very nice. Is that the dull NPC from Curse of Strahd, whose name I've forgotten? But yeah, there's a dull NPC in Curse of Strahd. Is that what you mean, or is there one in here as well? Carl saying that's what he feels like after a hangover. Not good. Not good. brain in a jar. So this art was actually released beforehand. So there is now a brain in the jar that cannot move, but it can hover, which is interesting. It's challenge rating 3 as well, which is pretty high for something that, you know, barely moves. It's got the Chill Touch cantrip, which is a ranged spell attack that does quite a bit of damage. Oh, and it's got a Mind Blast, so that's the ability that Mind Flayers get, which is actually pretty darn dangerous. It does a lot of damage, and if everyone happened to fail their intelligence saving throw, they'd be stunned for a minute, which is a long time to just get whacked over and over again without being able to do much about it. And it's also got some spell casting here as well. I was going to say that surely it's got a really low armor class and a low hit points, but it's armor class 11. I would have actually expected that to have been like 9, and 55 hit points is a lot. So this is some hefty little container this brain is in to have so many hit points to have to get through there. But yeah, quite cool idea, especially if you've never done something like that before. One in here, CR2. Okay, well, hopefully we'll get to that a bit later on then. Carrion Stalker. Okay, so there are Carrion crawlers in the Dungeons & Dragons monster manual, and it looks like that they have a symbiotic relationship with them. But they look a little bit different. They look like weird little tadpole things. They're challenge rating 3, they've got multi-attacks, they do 3 tentacle attacks. They've got a burst ability where it does a burst in a radius sphere that does poison damage and poisons people. If the creature is reduced to 0 hit points by the infestation, it dies. So there is no death saving throws if you get put to 0 hit points from this ability. And then it becomes a Carrion Stalker itself in 1d4 weeks. Stuff like that is very nasty and also very, very dangerous to throw at your players. Challenge rating 3, you could be throwing this at a level 2 party. And if even one of them get knocked down to 0 hit points, you have killed a level 2 character. So these seem very dangerous, but very fun, and in the right hands of the right DM can be very challenging and add a much bigger aspect to combat. Hey Rich, how you doing? We are currently going through the monsters in the new book, RICHTEN'S Guide to Ravenloft. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to have a look through it yet, but if so, let me know what you think. Carrionette. So I'm guessing this is going to be related to the Carrion Stalker. Oh, that's that's creepy. That is not okay. So it's challenge rating 1. It's got a silver needle, which it uses as a weapon. A soul swap. So unless the target is protected from that spell, it must succeed a charisma saving throw. And if it fails, it controls the target's body. And the target is unconscious for 1 hour. Once again, pretty nasty. This is a CR1 creature, and with just a DC 12 charisma saving throw, it could a player could lose its body to this creature. If the Carrionette's body is destroyed, both the Carrionette and the target die. This is nasty. This is CR1, and it's got an ability which can basically instantly kill a player. Yeah, it's pretty nasty, but cool, and once again, used right by a good DM, could be pretty horrendous combat. Death's Head. So it's a disembodied flying head. It's challenge rating 1/2, and it's got a bite attack. It's got a mind-bending bite as well, and a petrifying bite. Okay, so it looks like that it's got different forms here. So 3 different forms. Each different form has a different bite attack. Nice. Oh, this guy looks pretty nasty. He's got some little Medusa heads here. So what does he do? So he's a challenge rating 10, so a big boy here. And he's got headless summoning. So he can summon 3 death's heads. Mythic actions. Award party additional for defeating. Okay, so he can just summon some heads. Nice. Got some legendary resistances here and some mythic actions here. So mythic actions. Have they got a bit about mythic actions in this book? Don't think so. So I believe mythic actions were included in one of the Eberron books that was released, if I remember rightly. So if the headless summoning trait is active, it can use this option below as legendary actions. So it fits under the legendary actions, but can only be used if the headless summoning is active. It's also got multi-attack with 2 battle axes here. Its legendary actions are moves out with speed, provoking, attack of opportunities. So it just does some big old hits there for 3 legendary actions. Coordinated assault, so does when the guy makes a battle axe attack, one of the death's heads can also use a reaction to a melee attack. And deathless wail, an echoing shriek issues the headless stump. So all pretty nasty, but very cool, very different. There's nothing like this in the game so far, I don't think. And yeah, very nice. It would be very good as I can imagine this creature as something that's been tormenting a village for a while, and people are having problems with it. So your adventurers come to deal with it, and they have to fight through a load of undead stuff like skeletons, wights, nightmares, maybe even some of the headless creatures beforehand, and yeah, have to make their way through and eventually fight this as the big boss at the end. Gallows speaker, once again, some really nice art here. Some very floaty skeletal stuff. Challenge rating 6. And so what can he do? So he's got a lot of ghostly style stuff here. Foretelling touch. So he can do +7 to attack, average of 15 damage. And subtract a d4 to the next attack roll or saving throw. So that's quite nice, especially if you had some minions with him, and it would make the party a little bit less powerful as the combat goes on. And it's also got this ability where it can do a DC 15 saving throw or take quite a lot of damage for, this is only challenge rating 6, and that's 20 damage, waves of pain. Choice up to 3 other creatures of Gallows Speaker's choice within 30 feet who all take that as well. So that's quite a lot of damage. It's got a very low armor class and not many hit points, so it's pretty easy to kill. But before it goes out, it's probably going to do some pretty nasty stuff to your party between the foretelling touch and the suffering echoes. And there's no limit on how many times you can do this as well. So if he manages to survive multiple rounds, he can do this multiple times, which is pretty nasty. Oh, look at this guy. I can imagine this as a familiar. I wonder if there's going to be a section about... No, there's no section about adding it as a familiar. I could imagine that as, yeah, some weird familiar for a warlock. So it's 1/8, so very low challenge rating. Magic allergy. Immediately after a creature within 30 feet casts a spell, it can roll a d6 to determine what happens. And each of them are good for him. Oh no, it's not. So this one, it dies and makes a swarm of them. So there is below here a swarm of them, which is challenge rating 2. So if it rolls a 5 or a 6, it explodes into a swarm of them, which is pretty nasty. Other than that, it's just got a very simple bite attack. And then the swarm of them makes the bite attack hurt even more, and it also has a reaction so that it can hit people when they miss a spell. Nice. So it's the idea of something that doesn't like magic and is suited to fight against magic. So there's this guy as well, another sort of spirit, undead looking guy. Challenge rating 9, so very high, this one. He's got a multi-attack, so he does 3 slam attack and uses consume energy, which makes the target do a constitution saving throw or take necrotic damage, and it gains hit points. And once it regains hit points, it gets the following benefits for 7 days. Its walking speed increases to 40 feet, so it gets a lot quicker, and it gains flying speed equal to the walking speed. So that's an interesting mechanic I don't think I've seen before, where if this ability works and the creature regains hit points, it also gets the benefit of being empowered a bit by being a bit quicker and being able to fly. Nice. Okay, so humanoid slain by necrotic damage rises as a white. Okay, at the end of the white. Okay, so this has been seen before, where if a creature dies due to an ability, it then comes back as something else. I believe the Slard do that, one of the Slard at least. And it's also got change shape, so it can change it to a beast, humanoid, or undead. Nice, pretty nasty. Again, challenge rating 9. It does quite a bit of damage with its slam attacks, and it's got that consume energy ability, which is pretty nasty as well. On to the next one. So this is a Lycanthrope of some kind. It sort of looks like a werewolf, but apparently is different. It's got some legendary actions, so it's a challenge rating 13 with some legendary resistances. It does 2 longsword attacks in human form, or 1 bite and 1 claw in direwolf form. Its bite is pretty nasty, doing an average of around about 30. Its claws are also pretty nasty and could be knocked down prone. Okay, so as a bonus action, it can change between the forms as well. And then nothing super exciting as a legendary action. So it looks like it's just a Lycanthrope that hits quite hard. It's got a lot of hit points, 170 hit points, which is a lot. But yeah, no real abilities which are different than just being able to hit people hard. On to the next one. What is that? So that is some pretty cool art there. So let's actually read what this is. So Necromancer is a being of living blood formed by the ichor of evil gods. Okay, so it's literally blood that is evil in a little jar like this. Challenge rating 7. Rejuvenation, so it gets some health back, which is something to take in mind. It's got spider climb, which is pretty nasty. Can get up on the roofs and stuff as well. And it's got 2 attacks, pseudopods, which doesn't do much damage, but the target can be paralyzed, which is not very nice. And then it's got a ranged one, which also doesn't do too much damage, but it can do 2 of them per turn. And then blood puppeting, so this is going to be its big spell. So DC 14 Constitution saving throw. And attaches itself to the target for 1 minute. While attached, the creature only takes half damage dealt to it, and the target takes the remaining damage. Well, that's pretty nasty. So it can attach to your wizard, and then every time your barbarian tries to hit this creature, it's going to be doing half of the damage to the wizard. So it can telepathically control the target, move, action, or both. When controlled this way, the target can only take the attack action or the dash action. The attached target can repeat the same throw at the end of its turn, detaching from the staff. So essentially takes control of it, and yeah, people can't hit it or they're going to hurt their friend. Nasty. Level challenge rating 7. So by that point, they are starting to get nasty. So very, very nice. So the Nosferatu is a type of vampire. These are a mythological creature. If you've never heard of them before, challenge rating 8, so once again quite high. They've got a lot of stuff which is like vampires, like sunlight, sensitivity, spider climb. They can make 2 claw attacks followed by a bite attack. So each of those a little bit nasty, not too bad though. So 9 damage, and then this is a total of, there's quite a lot here. So around about 20 damage. And then it's got that feature as well, which I think vampires have as well, where the hit point maximum of the target is reduced by the amount of necrotic damage taken, which is always quite nasty, especially if you've got a long combat. And then its big spell is that it does a 15-foot cone, a DC 16 concentration saving throw, and everyone fails who takes necrotic damage, and it can't regain hit points for 1 minute. Once again, pretty nasty. If you end up having a long fight with creatures like this, it can get quite bad quite quick, because the maximum hit points is also going down during the fight, meaning that their clerics or the druids or the rangers can't heal the party back up, and they end up pretty screwed. Okay, so this, it looks like there's going to be a few different types of creatures here. Oh no, maybe not. I thought by this picture I thought there was going to be 3 different types of priests. So these are priests that use soul tattoos to do magic by the looks of it. So they're challenge rating 6. They got tattoos, or which means if they get to 0 hit points they can roll on the boons of undeath, which is down here. The priest dies and receives the boon it already has. If it resumes the new boon, it revives at the start of its next turn. So even if you knock them down, they revive with some sort of boon. To prevent this revival, the tattoo of the priest's body must be destroyed. The tattoo is invulnerable while the priest has at least 1 hit point. The tattoo is otherwise an object with AC 15 and it is immune to poison and psychic. It has 15 hit points, but it regains all of its hit points at the end of every combatant's turn. So that's pretty nasty. So it's going to be quite hard to actually keep this guy down then. And each time you do get it down, it's going to come back with a different ability here. Nasty. And then it also gets multi-attack, one of which can paralyze a creature till the next turn. It's got a ranged attack here, and it's got a bonus action, which is Soul Tattoo. What does that do? The creature has the size and silhouette of the original body, but is that what it uses? That block of the tattoo vanishes as the trapped soul manifests as a shadowy creature. Oh, okay, so it can make a shadow. Yeah, so it can also make a shadow and include that in the fight. Once again, pretty nasty. All of these have been pretty nasty so far. Okay, so yeah, pretty nasty as well. So yeah, if you have a quick look over these benefits they get when they get knocked to 0, they're also pretty nasty. This is a pretty deadly book by the looks of it then. So there's some restless creatures here, and then there's an area here about how to create a restless killer. That's a cool bit of art with this big raven scythe. Is that a scythe? I don't know what you'd class that as. Maybe a battle axe or a pick, a war pick. So slasher is challenge rating 8. Does 2 knife attacks. Each knife attack is very nasty, doing a lot of necrotic damage, and it also wounds the creature as well. So even if they don't get hit again, they're still going to be taking damage. Slasher can take 3 legendary actions as well, and this guy also has legendary actions, but he's challenge rating 12. He does some pretty nasty attacks again. So yeah, Executioner's Pick is going to hurt you. And he's got Deadly Shaping. Magically shapes the future of its surrounding. Deadly Implement. DC 18, Dexterity Saving Throw. If it fails, is struck by one of the following. Flying Stone. Lots of damage. Or Scoring Shrapnel, which is some damage and also some necrotic damage. And is also wounded. The wound ends. So yeah, really nasty. Again, this one's a little bit more basic, that's the sort of thing that you'd expect compared to some of the previous ones. KK saying that, I think you were talking about this last one, the priest of, I don't actually know how you say that, Ozzibus is very cool aesthetic. Carl saying it's pretty badass. Yep. Definitely deadly and not going to be fun to come up against. Star Spawn Emissary. So Starspawn were introduced in Volo's Guides to Everything, if I remember rightly. So there's already some Starspawns. And there is a lesser Starspawn, which is challenge rating 19, and then a greater Starspawn, which is challenge rating 21. So these are pretty nasty creatures. Let's see what size. So that's medium and that's huge. They've got a lot of hit points, 241 and 290. Let's see what they can do. So they've got legendary resistance and legendary actions. They've got multi-attacks, each of which do a nasty amount of damage. And they can change shape into a small or medium creature of its choice. When the its body melts away, a greater Starspawn emissary instantly appears in an unoccupied space. Okay, so if you kill a lesser Starspawn, a greater Starspawn immediately turns up and starts to beat on your party. So once again, the idea that if you kill it, the combat's not actually over, which is fun. So the greater Starspawn has a lot of attacks, 3 attacks, each of which doing a lot of damage. Some ranged as well. It's got Unearthly Bile, which is 100, so 30-foot radius, and then they have to do a DC 23 dexterity saving throw, which is obviously very high, or take 55 acid damage. For each creature that fails the saving throw, a gibbering Malva, which is also pretty nasty. It's a challenge rating 2. It appears in an unoccupied space and acts right after the emissary's initiative count and is enhanced in some way. So pretty nasty, really. It's got legendary actions and legendary resistances as well. The legendary actions in themselves are pretty nasty. So it's got 20-foot square here that does quite a bit of damage, and it's got 30 feet. Creatures 30 feet of it do quite a lot of damage. You would expect it to be pretty nasty for challenge rating 21 though, so sort of to be expected. And I do like the idea that if there is a lesser Starspawn emissary and it is killed, the greater one turns up to revenge the lesser one. Nasty. All very nasty. So this looks like is a version of a sturge. So sturge is a tiny little sort of mosquito-like creatures from the monster manual. So this looks like an empowered version of the sturge. It's challenge rating 4, got multi-attack, which do a bit of damage, and does some necrotic damage there as well. Ravenous children, so the Strigoi, I don't know how you say that, Strigoi, magically summon some sturges and they attack. Once again, nothing too crazy. It's nice that they included art of this one as well to give you an idea of what it looks like. I think it'd be quite hard to visualize without that bit of art. And so they don't do much with sturges, so it's interesting that they've done this. Okay, so there's some different swarms here as well. Oh, there's only 2 swarms, but there is a swarm of maggots. And then there's this nice little bit of art of some guy who did not do so well against the swarm of maggots. So it is a challenge rating 2. It's got some attacks here. Each time the diseased creature finishes a long rest. Oh, okay, so it can actually disease a creature with its infestation. And if it's diseased, and whenever it finishes a long rest, it gets a pretty nasty feature, such as blinded. This decreases its maximum hit points, and this gives it disadvantage. The disease lasts until it's removed by magic, or until the creature rolls the same random effect for the disease 2 long rests in a row. Nasty. Swarm of scarabs. So this is challenge rating 3 as well. So if the swarm starts its turn in the same space as a dead creature, the corpse is destroyed, leaving behind only equipment and bones. Spider climb, okay, and then it's got a bite attack, which is actually pretty nasty. So it does 14 damage on average for a challenge rating 3 creature. I guess that's what you would expect. Any creature can use an action to kill or remove the scales with fire, or a weapon that deals piercing damage, causing 1 hit point of the appropriate type to the target. There you go. Okay, on to the next one then. So these are Inquisitors of a factions. There's a few of them, all of which have some cool art to go along with it, and all of which are challenge rating 8 as well. So it looks like this top one here is the spellcaster. So it has some spellcasting, but it also has multi-attack with a silver longsword, which does some pretty nasty force damage. Sort of feels like a Jedi to some degree. So it's got some force magic, but it's also got a blade, which could be a lightsaber, maybe. Just saying. And then it's also got a Inquisitor's command, so it could be charmed until the turn, and it's telepathically controlled, like a Jedi. So, Inquisitor of the Sword basically can do more with a sword. Also gets a little bit of magic as well, and it can teleport using a bonus action. And then the last one is Inquisitor of the Tome, so it gets a little bit more magic, and also implode. Each creature in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point the Inquisitor can see within 120 feet does a Constitution saving throw or takes a lot of force damage and is knocked prone. It also has a reaction to increase its AC by 4 against attacks. All pretty nice. I actually really like it when they include factions like this with multiple different types of, I guess they are creatures, but they're not really creatures within it. And it's all about Count Strahd von Zarovich. So yeah, quite cool. Like it. Unspeakable Horrors. Unspeakable Horror. Oh, look at that guy. Pretty nasty looking as well. It's challenge rating 8, formed by the mist. It's got ooze, relentless strides, multi-attack, does 2 limbs attacks, both of which are pretty nasty amounts of damage, and it also has a 30-foot cone with a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or taking a lot of damage. It looks like these might be formed in the mists. So surrounding the domains of dread are mists. So it looks like that this is a creature that you might actually find within the mists, which is quite cool that they've included this. They've not just kept the creatures within the domains, but also creatures that might be around the domains. So that's cool. And that bit of art is pretty nasty. Imagine pulling that out and showing your players that that's what they're fighting. They're probably not going to be too happy. Okay, Vampiric Mind Flayer. So there's quite a few different types of Mind Flayers now, and now they've added Vampiric Mind Flayer to the mix. And that is some pretty horrifying art of a Vampiric Mind Flayer as well. Is CR 5, which is actually relatively low, so not too bad. It's got claws, got tentacles, it's got sunlight sensitivity, like you would expect from something that's vampiric. Drink sapience, I think you say that. So the creature has to do a wisdom saving throw or take psychic damage and gain a level of exhaustion. Mind Flayer healing from that. So that's something you don't see too often as well. The idea that attacks give exhaustion to players, so that's pretty nasty as well. And Disrupt Psyche is the bonus action, so you can do a 30 feet radius sphere, DC 15 intelligence saving throw, or be incapacitated. So very much like the normal Mind Flayer, Mind Blast, I think it's called. Were Ravens. So Were Ravens turn up in Curse of Strahd, but I don't think they're statted out. So this is them actually being statted out. They're challenge rating 2. They've got multi-attack with beak or short sword, depending if they're in raven form or human form, and they can change shape. Nothing too crazy about them here, but it's nice that they have statted them out, seeing as they were already a part of Curse of Strahd, and I assume a part of this book as well. So yeah, and it's also got a little bit about Were Raven Lycanthrope here as well. And then zombies. So it looks like this is the end. Yeah, so there are different types of zombies. So there is a swarm of zombie limbs, which is an interesting idea. So instead of actually just fighting zombies themselves, you might end up fighting the limbs of zombies. And they've got multi-attack, they do a little bit, and it looks like they try to grapple and restrain you as well. Doing a little bit of necrotic damage, so nothing crazy, but it is nice that they statted it up. Zombie clot. Oh wow, that is once again pretty horrifying. I've said that quite a few times in this video. Yeah, it's basically a load of zombies that have sort of been mashed together to make this big old zombie construct. And it is huge, it is challenge rating 6, it's got a stench, so if you're near it you could take some poison damage and be poisoned. It's got let's take it. Okay, so if you knock it to 0 damage without doing it with a critical hit or radiant damage, it comes back as well. So that idea has been coming up quite a lot in these monsters, the idea of when they get knocked to 0 they're not actually dead, they come back again. And they've got some slam attacks which are pretty nasty, and flesh entomb, where they have to make a strength saving throw or take a lot of bludgeoning damage and be entombed in dead flesh. They are restrained and continue to take necrotic damage. Pretty nasty creature again. Once again, if you chuck that to your players and show them that bit of art, I do not think they're going to be very happy. And then a zombie plague spreader. So this has the same undead fortitude of when it drops to 0, it actually drops to 1 instead, unless you did radiant or critical damage. It's got a viral aura, so any creature within 10 feet of it has to constitution saving throw or be poisoned. If a save is successful, it is immune for 24 hours. And then it's got 2 slam attacks, which don't look too damaging. It is only a CR4 creature though, and it's also got the virulent miasma, which is a toxic release of 30-foot radius, have to do a constitution saving throw or take poison damage. Humanoid reduced to 0 hit points dies and rises as a zombie. So that's something we've seen on some of these creatures as well, the idea that if they go to 0 hit points they come back as something else. So if I have to pick my favourites out of this, I think I definitely like well, this one's just disgusting. Look at him. He's actually disgusting to look at. So that's good to throw at players. This is probably stupidly deadly for a challenge rating 1, especially for something that looks so simple and not too bad. I like this idea. I like the idea of them being able to connect to someone and it being very hard for them to get them off. What else have we had? These guys are just really hard to deal with. Starspawn, swarms, these guys, that guy, vampire. So yeah, I think actually my favourite one is gonna be where is it? I feel like I've gone past it. Oh no, these guys. It's just weird because the art isn't actually directly next to the thing. So yeah, these guys that had the tattoos that were really hard to kill, and it is all around the idea of having a soul tattoo that does some pretty nasty thing. What are your favourites out of all of them? Everyone who's been here for it all, or if you've got the book yourself and you've read through this already, what was your favourite? This art is also just really cool. It shows you different types of people that would have these weird tattoos that are controlling you and not making it so you can't die. So yeah, let me know which ones your favourite were.